And welcome to The World Today and the Protagonists, our number two. Thank you so much for your time. Looking at the ISIS fiasco at the moment, just looking at some of the reports that are coming in, facilitating the secret return of ISIS brides who left the UK to join a terrorist cult, the filling of defence barracks with illegal immigrants in a small town where single young men are free to come and go at will, and the astronomical cost of housing asylum seekers that have become a permanent and very costly part of the UK budget. The flood of illegals in the UK, while somewhat less in scale to that experienced in America, looks and feels like it is wholly sanctioned by the government. Again, one has to ask, how do these representatives sit by and watch public finances and social cohesion deteriorate, creating grounds for dangerous and public insurrection? While some of the media are covering the public unrest and trying to hold incompetent ministers to account, these pressures are clearly insufficient to bring the madness to an end. UK borders are still open. Few, if anyone, are being deported or locked up or assessed for genuine claims for asylum, and the public is forced simply to lump it. It's hard to understand how opposition parliamentarians are allowing the government to get away with it, but we saw it happen under COVID. The Tories cannot sit back smugly. They haven't got anyone anyway who's a Tory now, just about, as it was under their government that the rot commenced. Can Nigel Farage do enough from his position? Politics would dictate that he is sitting pretty, but is he? Should the outrage be even greater? Our panel today, at the start, we're waiting for Alan Cook, who's just about there now. In fact, I'll just push this and see if we can bring him in. There he is. No, he's not in yet. What about that one there? No, and we're just going all over the place at the moment. Robin Tilbrook, just zigzagging around. Cam, where are you? Robin Tilbrook is a solicitor, leader and chairman of the English Democrats and chairman of the Workers of England Union. Our next guest, who's just going to pop in a second, is Alan Cook, politics and technology consultant. And our third guest from yesterday, in fact, and he was just absolutely brilliant, is Major Fred Galvin, author of A Few Bad Men, the true story of US Marines ambushed in Afghanistan and betrayed in America. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. We still haven't got this working at the moment. I don't know what Cam is doing, but anyway, there we are, all working now. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. What's your views, Robin, on the continuing saga of the asylum renters and the idea that government doesn't really care much about taking over small country towns?
Well, you're absolutely right. This is what is happening across England, and we've got big demonstrations occurring in a small market town in Sussex, Crowborough, where the cadet camp has now been taken over for housing illegal immigrants, and consequently, the people are, and they are all young men. The local people are extremely worried that they are going to be preyed upon by these people who are completely unvetted, and we don't know to what extent the people that are being housed there are actually serial criminals, let alone ISIS supporters. They might well be. And it is very worrying for local people. There have been a whole string of crimes committed by people in these type of camps or asylum hotels and so on across the country. And people are now being faced with this policy right across the country. Lots of towns like Crowborough hadn't really experienced what was going on, but now they're faced with it, and of course they can see that it is actually a threat not only the country.
Alan, your thoughts. How can Nigel fix this problem up?
Well, the difference between our party and the other parties is we actually have the political will to attack this, and the others don't. It's one of the reasons I left the Tory party. I was only with them for about a year, but I was in the Commons having a coffee with Sir David Davis and Sir Bill Wiggin, talking about immigration. At the time, they were both working on immigration bills, and they agreed with me that actually, under international law, we can do the same as we're doing now, pick them up in the Channel, but instead of taking them to Dover, we take them back to Calais. And they said, yeah, we agree. However, there's not the political will in the Tory party to do that. And they added it would look bad internationally. And I really don't care how bad it looks internationally. The second their feet hit English UK soil, we've lost the game. Because it is a game to them. They're playing the system. It's obvious. We all know it's happening. We can see it in front of our eyes, but there's not the political will to do anything about it. And ours is the only party that will do something about it. And what they should be happening now is they should be detained and deported. And by detained, I mean they should be locked up. They should not be free to roam. I said this on air before, that they are putting our children, our wives, anyone vulnerable in the community at risk by dumping this many unvetted fighting age men onto little villages. I think there should be some recourse to the people that are doing this. I think the first crime that happens in Crowborough by one of these people, the Home Secretary should be prosecuted at the same time. If God forbid, if someone gets sexually assaulted or attacked, I think the Home Secretary should actually be up for charges. This is not different to negligence through corporate manslaughter. They really should be some comeback to the people that are inflicting this on our citizens.
And Fred, from the US, I mean, we saw what happened when we had an influx of, some are saying, 40 million illegal immigrants on those caravans that were coming from South America. The UK hasn't got that headache at the moment because they all can't swim, but they do have boats, and so the problem is still there, smaller in numbers, but still there. What do you think the UK government should be doing?
They should not look at what happened and endorse what the United States did over the last four years in the previous administration. And Britain has a proud, long history and tradition, and they know what to do. They've had to face what Sir Winston Churchill had to do and stand up for their rights. But once you allow this information warfare and people trying to accuse people of xenophobia and this is the right thing to do, well, how many of those people, the Tories or whoever else is saying that, have any skin in the game? How many of them have these people in their homes? And I mean in every single room in their home with their husband and wife, with their kids. So put some skin in the game, but that likely will not happen. So it does need to be stopped. We have laws, and a crude comparison is you lock your doors, you lock your fence, and you protect what you have. This must also be done at a national level, or you will have no sovereignty. And what we've seen here in the United States is, yes, we're a nation of immigrants, but you have to vet those immigrants, and it's very hard to do on a large scale. And just a few of them can come in and cause massive problems. And when you don't know if somebody's a part of a transnational criminal organization bringing drugs, or they have a violent background, and that's what we're seeing across the United States, where we're seeing all these violent crimes in mass transit systems, murders. We're seeing rapes of our women, and just massive scale property crimes. This is what could likely come, and I'm not trying to be doomsday, but when we did not enforce our borders, that is what happened right after the 2020 election.
Fred, while you're here, what they've done is they've moved a whole bunch, and more will come. Young men, young immigrants, people that have come from other countries, and the young blokes, to a place called Crowborough. I think that's pronounced right from an Aussie's point of view. It's about right. The security concerns, though, because there is no security at the actual military base that they're staying at, and it's now no longer a military base and will be used to house immigrants. Just want to quickly, Robin, how many people live in this small village?
I'm not sure exactly. It is a small town, I think, Crowborough, and I would say it's probably maybe 4,000 or 5,000 people live
Okay,
there.
and so
The aim, I think, that the Home Office has is to have something like 800 um, illegal immigrants. I mean, they are people who've arrived illegally, with often having destroyed their papers and removed all possible ways of identifying them. Um, and they then claim asylum as soon as they get ashore. Clearly, it would be much better if they were never allowed ashore in the first place. But as they are on shore, the problem is not only the lack of political will, which is certainly the case, that the governing parties, both Conservative and now Labour, are not have no actual will to sort this out. Otherwise, they would have been able to do so. There's no real legal impediment that would prevent them. It's just that they don't want to do anything about it, and they are enabling it. I think the other problem, which from what Adam was mentioning about prosecutions, that he would have to bear in mind that the case would come up before a district judge who's been appointed under the Blairite Judicial Appointments Commission, and can only be appointed on the basis that he's got a lifetime's commitment to equality and diversity. So in other words, he's going to be a full-on sort of regime activist, and would be on the side of the mass immigration and enabling this to happen. So it would be difficult to find a judge, or you'd be very lucky to find a judge who was going to be on the side of clamping down on this.
So 800 men, women, or just all young blokes?
Young men only, what we're told.
Okay, so Fred, from a security point of view, you got a town or a village of 5,000. You got 800 in this army barracks coming and going as they would like. Papers destroyed. Documentation is very scarce. What sort of problems do you think, one, the locals can expect, and what would have happened in the US under Trump, for example? Under Biden would have been come and go. 40 million, you can live anywhere you want to live, and we'll help you out. Under Trump, it's an entirely different thing. If you have 800 undocumented or papers burnt and stuff like that, you're going to have problems, aren't you, for a town of only, or a village of only 5,000?
Yes, I see several factors in doing something like this. One is the economic, just financial cost. Who's bearing that burden? Well, those who are paying taxes. And then when you talk about a small town, putting them in military or former military barracks, that creates a lot of unrest, demoralizes the community. And this is what I fought for nearly 20 years in a war, in 27 years of service, is we go after networks that do these types of things. This is not something that's uncoordinated, that's just organic, and all these guys decided to flee from what? What specifically? They're playing the system, but when you look at how long you have to endure with these costs, you look at how it's demoralizing those that have served in this location, the people in the town, and do the citizens, and is the government going to do anything? And apparently it seems they're very fickle to take any type of strong action, just like in our past administration. But we have a leader now in the United States that's facing a lot of blowback in our international and national press, but it's not he's not going to capitulate. Where I mean, we just have too many, and you see he's trying to go after some of these that people are resisting up there in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and they're like, hey, this is who we're going after right now, and he's a pedophile. But a lot of these citizens just want, because their hatred is so strong for Donald Trump, is that's what is in their mind. This has become a psychological operation, and hopefully it does not get to that stage in the United Kingdom where people are just endorsing this. Yes, we have to bring these people in. You need to stand up and have some clever lawyers get this on the right side of the law. And like I had said many times here in the United States for years and years, we have an obligation for those who fail or elected officials to vote those incumbents out. I don't care if they did something good. You're accountable. So when the intersection is right here, you're allowing these people that do not have the best interest of the British citizens in their mind. Well, you need to get rid of those elected officials that are allowing this to happen. And same thing with the judges. I don't know how that necessarily works in the United Kingdom if some of them are elected or not, but vote them all out is what my uncle used to say, is get rid of every single one. Unless they perform and do the will of the people, they need to be gone. Hit the trap door on them.
I totally agree. Alan, the locals are genuinely afraid of what's happening to their village. It's sort of a thread from the government, though. They really don't give we would say, a rat's about what their citizens care about or want. They have another agenda. So two things. What's your thoughts on the security threat? And, if they don't give a rat's, as we would say in Australia, about their citizens, what do they give a rat's about?
Well, it seems to be their ideology more than anything else, because to a straight thinking person, none of this actually makes sense, because it is self harm for this nation. But you can see aspects of Marxism in there. You can see that the sovereignty of Parliament in the UK is actually being given away to unelected judges and international bodies, supranational bodies, and so we are basically removing our own power to do anything about this. It is a gross act of self-harm, but clearly part of a greater plan. There are political bodies around the world which I suspect are actually behind this, and that's where us as a party, Reform UK, are very different to what has gone and what we have now, because we are currently the only real UK-centric party. We're the only party that is actually going to put the UK citizen first. And obviously, this situation where we're dumping hundreds and in some cases thousands of undocumented fighting age men from a different culture who have a different view on women into our tranquil villages and towns, of course it's going to go horribly wrong. They know it is, but as you say, they don't seem to give a rat's and then the next word about it. But what we can do really is get rid of the current government, but we need a general election to do that. It's possible we're going to have this shambles, this sort of UK hating parliament in potentially for another 2 years, not just wasting money when they're actually also destroying the economy, but also putting the lives and hearts and minds of our people at risk. I can't really see a worse situation than what they're doing at the moment, unless we actually hit World War III, unless we get a full-scale invasion. We've had 200,000 of these illegal immigrants come to this country over the last decade, and that is a fighting force potentially. If they actually unify, if they actually get someone to lead them, that is bigger than all of our armed forces put together. We're very much teetering on civil unrest at the moment.
What
And
about
yeah,
and the other thing too, Alan, vigilantes? If you haven't got enough law and order, or it's not present, or you fell under threat, the obvious thing is the vigilante gangs, and which
yeah.
also can get out of hand. You can't have that happening, but I do understand why they would do it.
We can have that happening. It's happened in my borough. I'm actually the chairman of the London Borough of Bromley for Reform UK, and Sadiq Khan, the London mayor,
Incredible.
actually put ULEZ, which is a tax system for cars, into outer London, which does not have air pollution issues, and it was sold on air pollution. But there's one area called Biggin Hill. Biggin Hill just said no. So every time one of these ULEZ cameras is put up, whatever it's put up on comes down overnight. So they have kept Biggin Hill ULEZ free for years now. So the public, to a certain degree, when these things are actually forced upon them, are now saying no. And yeah, it's going to end up in rather an ugly situation. Obviously, we don't want that to happen, but we don't want these people being dumped into our villages. They should be deported. Uh, at least we can set up offshore processing very quickly, and then nothing is in the pipeline. So we're going to have to put up with this until something really bad happens, and then we are approaching civil unrest now. It's going to happen in pockets. We've already had riots in certain areas of the country, so it's an open book. This is happening, and the political class seem absolutely not bothered about it. So yeah, it's going to get worse and worse until something happens, and then hopefully people will actually look at it and stop this.
I thought I'd play you actually one more thing before we get into the next topic. Vigilante groups, Robin, in your opinion, I mean, in the US, if they're vigilantes, they have guns. In the UK, you have manners. Well, maybe not. But what could possibly go wrong? I mean, when I ever hear of a vigilante group, it makes me nervous because I think you have people with good intention at the onset. It's amazing how that good intention could sort of meander off that right track.
Yes. Well, Alan's quite right. We are starting to have vigilantism in a sense, but they haven't got to the point where it's anything more than damage to property, and that's what he's talking about there with the attack on the ULEZ cameras, and I think that's more widespread than just Biggin Hill. And people are getting more and more fed up with the agenda that's being pushed upon us. But it is I think worth bearing in mind that the leadership of the Labour Party are Fabians, and the motto of or the original emblem of the Fabians was a wolf in sheep's clothing, because what the idea behind Fabianism is that they are actually communists, but they're, instead of wanting a violent revolution, they want to make it happen slowly and incrementally, and I think that's basically the agenda that's behind what's going on, because the leadership of the political system in Britain, they are people who actually want to destroy the nation state. And they are probably applying the leftist idea of accelerationism, which is that things have got to get worse before we have the revolution. And so the move towards vigilantism is in a sense a sort of reaction to the attack that's occurring against our ways, our history, our political system, our culture. And people are getting fed up with it, and it's quite understandable that they are.
What do you think, Fred? Vigilante groups in the US have guns. In the UK, I said they have manners, but they're also very tough blokes and ladies, of course. What could possibly go wrong with a vigilante group? And what does that signify?
One thing, we have not had that happen on any type of large scale that I've heard of in the United States. But I would also, and I agree with what Robin and Alan had said, we have to understand that none of these other Arab nations or Muslim nations are wanting to accept any of these people. And it's not like they're fleeing from one that another would not accept whatever they're fleeing from, but they're not accepting them. So I think this is just like Fidel Castro did in sending everyone out of his prisons after he took over Cuba. This has happened to the United States on more than one occasion, not just with people in Cuba and Mexico and in Venezuela, but this is going on nonstop. I think the United States citizens have shown incredible restraint not to do anything when they are. I mean, they do publicize the rape, the despicable rape, and a horrific murder of Laken Riley and so many other young girls across America. Well, that's happening, and they have no intention to assimilate. Because one thing I also wanted to add is we have methods for legal immigration, and that is if you are an asylum seeker or you have some skilled job that you're applying for, whether it's a temporary visa or to be a permanent resident. And if we need to increase that, the United Kingdom and the United States can increase that because of the needs of our nations. But we have to understand that there is a bigger picture, that there is a larger Geppetto that's pulling the strings on this Pinocchio. And I believe this is a globalist picture that is meaning to stress and overwhelm, not just shock the systems of the United States and the United Kingdom, but to bring it down. And as Alan had just said, or Robin had just said, it's a long-term approach to infiltrate and overthrow our governments due to not assimilation, but to overpopulate. And 30, 40, 50 years from now, we will not remember what our nations currently look like. And that's a shame. And it requires action right now for our citizens to take back our governments and to make sure that those who are leading us can understand that they will be not just out of office, but the citizens see the unseen, that we will lose our culture. We will lose everything that we've had if our way of life and our government is disrupted by, these are invaders. Mm-hmm. And you look at the numbers that have happened in the United States, over 20 million. I mean, it was so much. It's just like this money that we've given to Ukraine. We can't keep track of it. I know Americans have bad memories, and especially when it comes to accounting. And this money goes everywhere, but we cannot allow that to happen globally to some of our strong allies, like in the United Kingdom.
Mm. I just want to play this video. It goes for about 2 or 3 minutes, and we'll come back. It is very scary on what government is not telling us. By the way, this is The Protagonists.
Good evening. Today, it's been claimed that the British state has been secretly sneaking ISIS brides back into Britain for years. 6 women linked to Islamic State, held alongside Shamima Begum, have been quietly brought back to the UK. That is according to the director of a camp that holds these jihadi brides. Now, before any bleeding heart liberals pipe up and say, oh, these poor women are victims, can I just remind you of the fact that Shamima Begum knew exactly what ISIS were doing when she travelled over there to join a genocidal Islamic death cult. Here she is, speaking to the media back in 2019.
Did you know what Islamic State were doing when you left for Syria? Because they had beheaded people, there were executions.
Yeah, I knew about those things, and I was okay with it.
Bingo. There you go. Women can be just as radical or even more radical than men. A report by the Henry Jackson Society in 2019 found Muslim girls were more active when it came to seeking out extremist material online. And let me introduce this monster. This is Sally Ann Jones, okay, known as the White Widow. She was born in Greenwich, married a jihadi, wanted to recruit an army of Islamist women. She was behind a plot to assassinate the late Queen and Prince Philip. She used social media to tell people how to make homemade bombs. In 2016, she issued specific calls for Muslim women to launch terrorist attacks in London, Glasgow and Cardiff during the month of Ramadan. It is dangerously naive to say that women cannot be as bad as the men when it comes to jihad. And we've reportedly let some of these ISIS brides back into Britain. Shocking. We've apparently allowed hundreds of actual ISIS fighters to come back to Britain as well. In fact, more than 400 of them. Here's Sadiq Khan being grilled about it shortly after the London Bridge terror attack.
How many of those 400 have come back to London?
The estimate is just over half. It's one of the reasons why it doesn't make sense for the government to be cutting resources from those...
Where are they? You're the mayor of this capital city. Where are they?
I can't follow 400 people. What I can do is make sure with the policies, because what we can do though is make sure we've got the resources for the police and the experts to follow.
Or you just couldn't let the jihadis in. You know, that is an option, isn't it? I mean, the fact that previous governments appear to have been sneaking ISIS brides back into Britain could be used by Shamima Begum's lawyers. Begum is taking her case to the ECHR. They're going to take one look at this and, mark my words, she'll be back in Britain before you can say Allahu Akbar. This is just like the Afghan resettlement scheme all over again. Around 40,000 Afghans were secretly brought to Britain at a cost of billions of pounds after successive governments tried to cover up the fact that there'd been a data breach that supposedly left them at the mercy of the Taliban. But they bungled it. They imported criminals and people who've been referred to the terrorism watch list. The Telegraph reported that, shock horror, some of these blokes might actually be linked to the Taliban. Who could have seen that coming? What are our leaders doing to us? And I need to remind you that you weren't allowed to know about the ISIS brides or the Afghans. I think they never wanted you to find out the truth. I think they are willing to put you and your family at risk to hide it from you. You have every right to be very angry about that.
Well, there you are. Robin, what's your thoughts? I mean, that is disturbing. It's also happening in Australia. And it's as if we live in two different universes sometime, but that is quite alarming, isn't it?
Absolutely, and Patrick Christie is absolutely right. This is what's happening. There is obviously also a particularly alarming development just at the moment with the Islamist government forces of Syria overthrowing the Kurds in the eastern part and consequently approaching the camps where all the ISIS prisoners were being held. There are almost certainly very large numbers of them going to be released. So there will be a surge in problems occurring across the Western world, and quite a lot of it will be happening, I suspect, here in England. I think it is also worth bearing in mind, in light of what Fred was saying about voting these people out, we've got problems with that at the moment because our Labour government, with the collusion of many conservative so-called politicians, have been cancelling elections across England. This is now the second year in which quite a lot of elections have been cancelled. Who knows whether we will in fact get the general election in 2029, which is what we're looking forward to. They might be trying to say next thing that it should be not 5 years but 7 years between elections. They've got a majority in the House of Commons. They are engineering a majority in the House of Lords. They'll be able to get whatever through that they want to from a purely legal point of view, quite ignoring the moral point, of course.
Alan?
Well, going back to what Robin was saying earlier on about the Fabians, there's no big smoking gun, but they've left a very long trail. And we can actually see how we've got to this position. From the Blair Brown days, a socialist party did various bits of constitutional damage, which the next Tory party should have and would normally have actually corrected. But unfortunately, they were global socialists, so they actually went along with it. And in certain cases with immigration, actually doubled down and made it an awful lot worse. So now we're actually back to a proper full-blown socialist government again. These things are going to get worse and worse. But, the 2010 Equalities Act that was pushed through has actually expanded what was originally the Long March. And now, we've always known that these sort of lefty, no borders, no nation tendencies were in the universities and to a certain degree in the civil service. But now, thanks to ESG and DEI and other aspects of what has been added into our country, it's now in the private sector as well. So they've very nearly completed the march in pretty much taking over the country. And we've given judges far too much power now. And we're taking sovereignty. I mentioned earlier, things like the Supreme Court, Blair's little baby, that should have been disbanded because that has taken power out of the laws. We've given the Bank of England the ability to set interest rates. That should be something done by government. So we're emancipating our government. And it's no wonder we're being overrun. Letting her back into the country, the Home Secretary said no, but now that will be overturned by the legal system. And it won't even be our legal system. It will be the ECHR. So, we are giving away our sovereignty and our powers. And then we seem a little bit surprised when it's used against us. We are, obviously we're planning on overturning all of this. It's going to be a hell of a job, and it's less of a political battle now, and actually because of the situation we find ourselves in, it's more of a legal battle. So a lot of what we do when we actually do get into power, and they can't cancel the general in my mind. Their people will be out in the streets. If they try and do that, it wouldn't last long. Maybe another lockdown to stop people getting in the streets. But I think people are wise now to what they're up to. I can't actually see that happening again. It's what this country is facing is what America has started going through, which is the reversal of a lot of bad decisions over the last couple of decades. And so luckily they are trailblazing for us, certainly with getting rid of wokeness. So, where America is going on a positive nature, then we will actually follow them, I believe.
Fred, you've served just about everywhere, and you deep cover the whole lot. What can we expect from an ISIS bride? Because they were around many barbaric acts, and who knows, some probably committed those acts. What can we expect, for example, in, say, a community that an ISIS bride has come back? Is she a danger to society? What is she harbouring? Do you think that's a wise thing to bring back ISIS brides back to, say, the UK or those to Australia? And you've had first-hand experience with all sorts of action. I would probably think it's a little bit like Trevor Coates, and that's who's a military cross. He was not speaking very highly about this happening at the moment. What's your views?
Well, thank you. The Marine Special Operations organizations that I stood up in 2006, we had to go down, and those Marine Raiders went down to southern Philippines. And that's actually the longest war that America's fought. It's still ongoing. But there is a extremist Islamic culture down in the southern Philippines in Mindanao. And there was a battle in 2017 that the Marine Raiders had fought alongside the armed forces of the Philippines in a 60-day fight, killing over 900 Islamic extremists from both ISIS and Abu Sayyaf. So when you don't take care of this is a radical ideology. And I know in America, we take our freedom of speech, and I've seen a lot of people go out there and say things who served alongside me, and they're retired military senior officers. And some of them are Muslim, and some of them are saying, like, you can't, this is extremist. You can't say this about Muslim. And, we treat, I can say as an American, the problem is with Islam, and that's not an endangered species. We have to call it for what it is. That is an ideology. And that ideology, more than anything else in the world, is what's wanting to kill us. We are the primary target. We're the public enemy number one. When a lot of these people are coming in from South and Latin America and Central America, this is they're in the. I'll rephrase it this way: the best you can expect is that these hundreds, about 800 young men, the best thing is that they come in and they undermine the young lads that are trying to get work, maybe unskilled, maybe they're painters or they do some kind of labor, and now these guys will work for a fifth of the cost. And so I've seen that happen in my own hometown in Mid-America, that everybody that used to have these jobs, now they're displaced. That's what's coming. But at worst, you'll have rapes, you'll have property crime, you'll have massive costs, and then you'll have this radical ideology. That is what took place down in southern Philippines. And once that gains a toehold, it's very difficult to ever root that out. And especially when you have members of parliament and the members of the media trying to amplify this information warfare that, oh, don't be a xenophobe. And well, how many of these people do you have as friends or in your house? How many of them are you so soft-hearted towards that you're helping out with work and anything else? It's just that kind of phoniness. It needs to be called out. But the best way to call it out is through the elections and vote them all out. People that believe in traditional cultures of the West need to make sure that they are organized, just like this globalist agenda is. They are organized and they have their voice heard at the polls, and they get every single one of these incumbents out. There has to be accountability and a cost for allowing something like this to destroy our nations.
Robin, can I ask you, what would force the government to change their policies on immigration and asylum seekers, besides being voted out?
Well, the trouble is, although only about 20% of the electorate voted for Labour, the political system is so broken that they've nevertheless got a supermajority of MPs in the House of Commons. Our constitution gives a supermajority in the House of Commons almost total power. And it's made even worse by the fact that the other chamber, the House of Lords, they are basically ensuring that that they're going to get a supermajority of Labour peers in the House of Lords as well, because they're able to fix the appointment system. So we're not easily going to be able to change the course before the next general election.
Alan, what do you think would encourage the government to change their policies, besides the thought of being booted out, which, I mean, they should go. I mean, and it depends on the numbers that turn up for the other parties, including Reform. But everybody is suggesting that Nigel will be the next PM with the election. But there's a few years to go before that, and it's amazing how governments do U-turns and change their mind. So what would encourage the government, besides the fear of losing the next election, to change their policies?
Well, Reform now are the largest party in the country by membership. We are ahead in the polls for well over the last 200 polls now. It is looking like it's ours to lose. But what will the government do? Nothing. They are not part of the solution. They are 100% part of the problem. It is ideology behind this, and they are not for changing. It's some people are even saying some of the damage they're doing is deliberate. They may be operating a scorched earth policy. So whoever actually gets into government next, whoever inherits this, it's such a mess that the voting public will not see any improvement from the next government, landing them the chance of getting back in again. There's no evidence for that apart from the fact that it does seem deliberate, the mess they're actually creating here. Nothing cannot be undone in British Parliament. You cannot tie the hands of the next government. So, however, Blair and Brown discovered that actually international law is a damn sight harder to reverse than bills going through Parliament. That is why, we are now being, most of the Labour Party, well, not most, but an awful lot of them in the front bench are actually lawyers. They don't have practical business experience, which it might be why the economy is tanking. So we are led by lawyers, and these people are a big part of the problem. International law being one. We must give away the Chagos Islands to a country that's never owned them because the UN says so. They kowtow to international bodies, international law, and they do not put the interests of this country first. They're not going to change. So, the bond market may tank, and they may force a general election. Outside of that, the party itself is not going to change. They think they're doing the right thing for the long term.
Just got somebody on chat. Mogden said that by the time reform may get in, the UK will be totally taken over. It's going to be a very big job to undo what the Labor Party have put in place. It's just going to be incredibly hard.
Yeah, but we're working on that now. We're writing the bills now that we need. Trump 2.0, first day, 100 executive orders signed off. We can't do that because we have to get these through Parliament and then through the House of Lords. But the bills that we need to actually get us back on our feet again are being written now. So we will hit the ground running. We're not, the Labour Party seem to be the only ones that actually didn't know they were going to win the last general election, and they're running around headless for the first year. They still seem to be doing that now. It's incompetence as well as, I think, the will to damage the country. So, we are working on what's needed to be done now. And as I said, there's a lot of legal things we need to change as well as pushing bills through Parliament. So we'll be ready for the task when we get in.
Righto. Robin, what do you think?
Well, I like what Alan's saying, but I think we're a long way between the problems we got now and any solution. And I think we can't be sure that the electoral system will be left as it was, and we can't be sure what will be done about allowing people to vote in the general election. For instance, the vast number of legal immigrants that have been allowed in by the Conservatives and now Labour. The fact is, they may all wind up having a vote in the general election because the Labour Party may be able to change the laws. They would have the power to do so, and that may actually skew the outcome so that we don't wind up with anybody that wants to do anything about the ongoing mass immigration. We may wind up with a situation where we simply are not able to take control through any legal or constitutional means.
Fred, you just looking at, and we are winding up very shortly, by the way, looking at the US, it's an incredibly hard job to undo the damage the administration beforehand put in place, isn't it?
That is a true statement. And we just have so much in our media, as well as members of Congress, that are working against law and order. They disregard that you had the Clintons, you had the Obamas. They deported much more than President Trump is deporting right now, but they're just they're obstructing justice. We have laws that say you can't do this. President Biden did it, and just trying to reverse. I mean, going after the worst. It's a big problem. But I believe, and hopefully I'm wrong, that this can happen. And once people get a toehold and feel that they can assert themselves, stand by. I think it's going to be much worse of a situation. And as we've seen in Minneapolis with these daycares, just people coming in from Eastern Africa there in the Horn of Africa and just exploiting our finances. Because, as my great-grandfather used to say, don't be so open-minded that your brains fall out. And that seems to be what's happened to a lot of elected officials in the United States, that they just allow these loopholes for people to make millions and millions of dollars by ripping off Americans, and right in front of our eyes. The truth here is blatantly hidden right in front of our eyes, and if we don't do something, it's going to be done to us. So we have to, just like I commented about Sir Winston Churchill, it's one of those times when once France fell, we got to see what's going on. And the United States is in a really bad position, and it's time for the United Kingdom to pay attention to what's going on here and take decisive action.
Yeah. Can I quickly add to that, Mike?
Yep.
What we're seeing in this country now is actually, it goes on to both of what Fred and Robin have just mentioned, that the democracy in this country is actually under attack. And in the States, they had Antifa, which was pretty much a homegrown terrorist organization by the end of it. And we are seeing seeds of that happening here now. We have these organizations which are all interlinked. People like Hope Not Hate, Stand Up to Racism, they're all connected to the Socialist Workers' Party. And so you've got these very far left organizations which are attacking venues of other parties. They're, threatening venues. So we're seeing, basically there is no far right political party in this country. But what we do have is some very active far left organizations which are scaring people, frightening people into believing that the bogeyman is out there, that there is a large far right aspect to this country, because they need there to be for them to actually exist. And what these organizations are doing is getting a lot of money out of people under the premise that there is a far right uprising in this country, which is simply not true. So we are seeing these organizations which are actually describing other parties, but actually what they're using to describe us is how they are acting by actually intimidation and shutting down democracy. So we do need to be careful.
We've run out of time. Alan, if somebody wants to find out more about what you do or about reform or stuff like that, how do they do that?
We have a website, so just go to reformuk.com and you'll find it.
Fantastic. Or look for Nigel. And Robin, if somebody wants to find out more about what you do and your things in life, I mean, ask you about those guns, those muskets behind you. I'm sure they'll be snapped up by the UK military. Maybe not. But how do they find out more about you?
Yes, so I'm on Twitter at Robin Tilbrook, and there's also a website for the English Democrats, which is englishdemocrats.party, and for the Workers of England Union, workersofengland.co.uk.
And Fred, if somebody wants to find out more about you or about your book, A Few Bad Men, the true story of US Marines ambushed in Afghanistan and then betrayed in America, how do they find out more about you?
Just search the website, commandoshow.com, and they'll be able to find everything there.
Enjoy Hawaii. I mean, it must be almost 10 o'clock. Joe, just past 10 for you.
Yes.
You'll have to have a Mai Tai.
Yes.
Yesterday, I'm still jealous.
Too, yes.
Yeah, and I'm in the in summer in Australia, but Hawaii would be one of the great places of the entire planet. Look after it, Fred. Thank you very much, folks, for being part of the Protagonists. This is The World Today.